Real quick before this episode starts, I just wanted to let you all know that the Small Church Musicians Podcast is going on the road. That's right. Thursday, April 18th, the Small Church Musicians Podcast is going to be at the Chris Tomlin Holy Forever World Tour opening night in Newark, New Jersey. Get your tickets because they're selling out fast. And if you listen to the show, come say hello. I'd be honored to say hi to you all. See you then. Hello, everyone. My name is Justin, and I'm a small church musician. I'm on a journey to find the best sounding equipment for my budget, and I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to the Small Church Musicians Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about some guitars. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about two of my favorite guitars that I own, my PRS S2 and SE Starless. These are my go-to electric guitars for leading worship. They consistently sound absolutely fantastic, regardless of whatever genre I'm leading worship through. The reason I want to talk about these two particular guitars, other than the fact that I love playing them and they sound great, as if I need any other reason, is that I recently had a realization about them, or rather, guitars similar to them. If you look around the world at a lot of churches' worship teams, you see guitars very, very similar to the Starless. They have two humbuckers and a tremolo system, most likely a Bigsby, one volume, one tone control, and a three-way selector switch. It's almost commonplace all over the world. And so, this led me to ask a question, and I want to wrestle it with you all today. Why does this style of guitar work so well for worship music? Let's get started, shall we? Here's a track I did with both of my Starless, just so you can really appreciate what they sound like. Like I said in the intro, if you look at guitars that artists such as Nigel Hendroff of Hillsong United, David Hislop of Bethel Worship, and so many others, you might notice a pattern, not in the specific guitars that they're playing, because they can really vary from person to person, but in the body style, layout, and hardware that they're equipped with. Those being two pickups, usually dual humbuckers, but a lot of the time you will also see a humbucker size P90 in the neck position, with a humbucker accompanying it in the bridge, one volume control, one tone control, a three-way pickup selector switch, and of course, a Bigsby vibrato system. This setup and layout has become so incredibly popular that a lot of newer guitar luthiers such as Veritas Guitars and Seventh Day Guitars offer this style of setup on most of the models that they build. And it's not just the newer companies that are doing this. Gretsch has been offering this style of instrument for years and years and now, although you typically see it more on their semi-hollow bodies, but it is on their solid bodies as well. And Duesenberg has really been successful with this style of instrument. My first exposure to this was when PRS revealed the Starla, a single-cut style instrument with dual pickups and a Bigsby. So clearly this design is everywhere. But why? What makes this style of guitar so popular? Well, in an effort to answer the question, I think we first have to consider the star power that's associated with these guitars. Meaning that these guitars are used by incredibly popular and incredibly visible musicians who are using this kind of instrument in a very public and visible way. And so on some level, that implies to the rest of us that this must be the correct style of instrument for worship. But I think it goes beyond that to a technical level. So let's start out by looking at the body style of these guitars. The most common version that I've seen is a single cutaway style instrument, either Tele style or modeled after a non-archtop Les Paul instrument. Kind of like my Starless. In my observations, and this is entirely just my own, what I've observed and what I think, the flattened body style instruments lend themselves very suitable to having a Bigsby system installed, but I have seen them on carved top instruments, and I know I love the look of a Les Paul with a Bigsby. It's just a great look. But I'm going to say again, before I go any farther, that there are plenty of great double cut archtop style instruments that also have this kind of setup, especially from Gretsch and really especially from Duesenberg. You don't see them as much as you do single cut or Tele-inspired instruments. Now let's move on to the actual pickups and the controls for the guitars. My Starlas come equipped with PRS Starla pickups, which are underwound pickups. They're a little bit halfway between a humbucker and a P90, but they have Filtertron style sounds to them. They sound incredibly clear, and they really sound good with any amount of gain on them. When I'm playing them, they have almost a Telecaster-esque kind of sound, so I tend to think of them as like a Tele with a slightly different cut. I've also observed that other guitar makers will either use their own proprietary pickups or they'll utilize pickups from companies like Lambertone or another independent pickup maker. But regardless, the pickups will typically have a lower output unless somebody custom orders one with higher output. They're always incredibly clear for worship. In Duesenberg, they do use their own pickups, which sound absolutely incredible. I've tried out the Domino P90, and it's my favorite pickup I've ever heard. It sounds so good. Check it out if you can. But they typically have a lower output, but they'll be super, super clear, and they cut through the mix really, really well. Being tele or single cut style instruments, all these guitars will typically have one volume control, one tone control, and a 3-way selector switch. So now we're at our big question. Why is this kind of instrument so successful in a worship environment? And I'll be honest with you all, I don't have a definitive answer. I can really only offer my theories and my perspective, the perspective of a small church worship leader. The first being that, as I previously stated, there's an element of star power that comes with this kind of instrument, meaning that the popular players will say, hey, this kind of instrument works really well for me, so go check it out for yourself. And thus, the origin of the popularity spike is created when, in an effort to be like our influences, we think to ourselves, hey, this person says this is so good, so it must be good enough for me too. But beyond being influenced by popular worship leaders and following a trend, I think that a lot of the reason this kind of instrument is so popular is the versatility that it brings to a worship environment. An instrument with pickups that sound good in any level of gain, they have incredible clarity that cut through the mix. What more could you ask for? You add in a tremolo system and you have your Swiss Army knife of guitars. You can get through an entire set list with just one guitar, unless your set list calls for a different kind of guitar, like a hollow body, or you want a Strat style instrument. But even that sometimes can be helped through using different effects and amps. And what if your guitar has a coil splitting capability? You can get your single coil sounds out of your humbucker style guitar. It really is a Swiss Army instrument. So now we come back around to the beginning of the podcast where I talked about my two Starlas. And people ask me in church all the time, why do I use them as often as I do? And I give them a lot of the same reasons that I've just given all of you. They sound absolutely incredible with any level of gain. I really, really love writing lead parts on either of them. I feel very inspired whenever I pick either of them up, but especially my S2, my first ever, I should say, American-made instrument, and I got it for an absolute steal, so I have a sentimental attachment to it. The pickups on both of them sound so incredibly clear on lower gain, but when I do kick on the drive and really try to crank the gain up, they really, really shine within worship music. And they're so incredibly versatile. These guitars do have the capability to split their coils. They have coil splitting technology, which allows for another level of versatility because now your humbucker-equipped guitar can give you single coil sounds too. I should specify I don't use the coil splitting on my Starlas really at all. It's just a me thing. I just prefer the sound of a humbucker. My Starlas have a 25-inch scale length, almost the same as a Tele. It's about a half-inch difference, which I started out on the Telecaster. It's still one of my all-time favorite guitars, and I still use my thin line Tele Deluxe all the time in church, so I'm very attached to that kind of a scale. They feel super familiar, and they're super comfortable to play on a regular basis and for long periods of time. For me, the biggest reason that I reach for a Starla when I'm getting ready to lead worship is, as I said, they consistently sound great. I know that they're going to. If my worship team and I are working out a new song, my first choice of guitar is going to be a Starla because I know what I'm going to get out of it, and I have a baseline of what to expect, and I can tweak my sounds from there. So now that I've talked all about this kind of guitar, let's talk about my Starlas. I highly recommend the Starla to anybody looking for an instrument like those we've been discussing today, but I should point out that at this point in time, unfortunately, the Starla has been discontinued by PRS Guitars, so you may have to purchase them on the used market, but that's entirely okay. I bought both of mine on the used market, and my S2 is my favorite guitar that I own. It's my go-to, even if I don't use the coil splitting, and I really cannot stand the Bigsby. If you can change strings on a Bigsby without getting frustrated, you have much more patience than I do, and I give you all the credit in the world. Before I go any farther when I start playing, I should explain the differences between these two guitars. For PRS, the S2 line are all American-made instruments, but they're made at a lower price point than their quarter line. But again, they're entirely American-made. As for the SE line, these are made in Indonesia and they're the most affordable of the PRS line. That being said, they have outstanding quality and are under $1,000. I've seen demo and used versions of these guitars go for as low as $450. Especially the newer generation of SE guitars, they are worth every single penny, and you can get them used for virtually nothing. And that's really something to consider if you're looking into these kind of guitars. Here's the really cool thing, though. Over the last couple of years, PRS has been bringing some of their discontinued core models, such as the Starla, like you're going to hear today, the Swamp Ash Special, which I plan to talk about very soon, and the Mira, the cousin of the Starla, to the SE line to breathe new life into them and to get them into the hands of more players. They're absolutely fantastic. Definitely check them out. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play the track again that you heard at the start of this podcast, but I'm going to recommend listening to it with headphones because I'm going to pan the two different guitar parts left and right so you can hear the difference. The S2 Starla, which is going to be playing the lead part, is going to be panned to the left, and the SE will be panned to the right. It's running into my normal Sunday morning pedal board, which is running into my Focusrite for recording, and I'm using Audacity as my recording software. Check it out. So let's recap what we've talked about today. Why do I think guitars like this are so useful in worship music? I think it comes down to versatility. These guitars can cover an entire set list worth of music by themselves. They're seemingly designed to be the Swiss Army knife of the electric guitar world. And for us, worship leaders, we have limited gear that we can physically bring with us to a worship setting. Maybe you have one guitar and maybe a backup if you can fit it. These instruments sound consistently fantastic at different levels of gain and in various different styles of worship music. They're built to be reliable and they're built to be versatile, and I think that may be the correct answer to the question. But what do you think? Why do you think that this style of instrument is so incredibly popular? Is there something I missed? Is my theory entirely wrong? What do you think of the sound of the Starla? Let me know in the comments below because I'd love to hear what you all think about one guitar built to do it all. And I very much pray that this episode has been of some kind of entertainment and help to you all. You can all help us out here at the Small Church Musicians Podcast by liking the show, leaving us a review, sharing the show with someone on social media, and of course, subscribing for more episodes like this. Remember, my goal for this show is that it would one day become a resource for everybody, but specifically to my fellow worship leaders, and especially to my fellow small church-based worship leaders. We're dealing with an entirely unique set of challenges and circumstances, but you need to know that you're not alone on the journey you're walking. God has called each and every one of us to lead his people in worshiping him, and that's an awesome and humbling responsibility. So you please know that you have friends, allies, and resources on this journey. And until next time, I'm Justin, and I'm on a small church musician's journey to find the best sounding equipment for my budget, and I will see you next time.